take a few moments of your time to talk to you about several important topics as they relate to current events and key issues of our modern world as we've just passed from one century into another. Most of you already have some idea of what fascism is and what we've achieved in the past under statesmen like Benito Mussolini and General Franco. So I won't bore you here with a history lesson, but I will point out that corporate statism, which is the economic center of fascism, may be a perfect antidote to bourgeoisie capitalism, which is destroying the lower and lower middle class in the United States. Also, there are some major differences between the United Fascist Union's proposed New Age conservative socialism and conventional fascism. Traditionally, in the past, the fascist movement has always allied itself with Christianity. This was due in part to the era that spawned our movement following the First World War. The original fascist philosophers were all great men, no doubt about that, but their vision of the world was colored by the prejudices of the time they lived in. So, meaning to do their best, the fascist leaders couldn't have done worse when they allied our movement with Christianity. As we see, the salvation of Western civilization lies not in upholding Christianity, but in breaking with it. The United Fascist Union proposes we revive the mystic cult of Rome, Greece, Egypt, and Babylon and use them as a religious foundation for a new theocratic state. This does not mean we would in any way interfere with the religious practices of Muslims, Jews, or any other non-pagan subjects in our empire. Of many important topics of the day, one comes foremost to my mind. Restore the American people's faith in government. One way to accomplish this might be to follow up on how money is being used, which is given to the various states in the form of federal grants for benevolent projects. The government should make sure money is being spent as earmarked for community projects and is being appropriately apportioned to the benefit of the whole community, not misused to indulge a few luxury-seeking fat cats. Another topic that's been in the headlines repeatedly lately are all of these mergers and acquisitions. Astra and Zeneca of Wilmington, Delaware merged last year, and a recent issue of the newspaper USA Today covered the mergers of AOL and Time Warner in the communications industry and Glaxo, Wellcome, and SmithKline and Beecham in the pharmaceutical field. So we are in a tricky phase of globalization right now. While certain states in the Union, like Pennsylvania, are breaking up their old utility suppliers' monopolies, we are at risk of seeing new monopolies in the fields of communication and drugs rising up to take their place. These giants will be able to inflate prices and abuse consumers all they like. The United Fascist Union recommends the government take steps to make sure no new monopolies rise up in this country. We also propose the institution of a universal price index which would not only regulate the costs on necessities of life, but actually force them to decrease. I don't understand why, if an apartment costs $400 in Baltimore, Maryland, a comparable one in New York City should cost twice that. Beginning with the Reagan administration and continuing through the reign of the sitting president, we have saw the reigns of 3 tax and spend presidents. This is why postage stamps, which were 13 cents when Mr. Reagan took office, are now 33 cents when Mr. Clinton is leaving office. Clearly, these trends cannot be allowed to continue, and something must be done to halt them immediately. We believe instituting a moderate form of conservative socialism which would in no way interfere with private property rights or restrict the activities of mid-level businessmen to make money would be a step in the right direction. For months now, Federal Reserve Bank policymakers have been concerned about many forces they fear will eventually ignite runaway inflation. These are tight labor markets, enormous consumer demand in a go-go market, sky-high stock prices, and rising prices for imported goods and commodities such as oil. This would tip the lopsided scales of wealth distribution in this country even further than they are, between the super rich and the hordes of have-nothing. It seems that each generation has less than the one preceding it did. I don't think this is right in a country with such an abundance of material wealth as the United States possesses. This is yet another reason we need a more equal and just distribution of the wealth in this country under conservative socialism like corporate statism. Insurers are already warning Medicare HMO members to brace for another round of benefit cutbacks in 2001. A recent issue of a local newspaper was talking about Cecil County's largest HMO provider shutting its doors in the fall of 1999, leaving numerous seniors in Baltimore's suburbs like Elkton, Havre de Grace, Northeast, and Aberdeen literally out in the cold this winter as far as Medicare is concerned. I've said it before and I cannot stress it enough. We have to do more to provide for our senior citizens in this country. In the Orient, elderly people are called wise elders and treated with the utmost respect. In the West, we shun the old and shove them into nursing homes, leaving them there to vegetate and die, perhaps because they remind us of our own mortality and our own inevitable fate. Be that as it may, America's elderly citizens deserve better after retiring from a lifetime of service and devotion to this country. The United Fascist Union proposes instituting a system of socialized law and medicine that would be supported by the government, which would greatly reduce health care costs and legal fees for all Americans and provide these services absolutely free to people over 70. I once heard an economist say, Social Security is meant to be one leg of a three-legged stool. Why can't we make Social Security more comprehensive by investing the revenues collected from this pension in safe stocks and mutual fund portfolios, like President Clinton recommended repeatedly during both his terms in office? The United Fascist Union recommends that the government establish a new subsidy that would be deducted from a worker's pay as part of a Social Security package at no added expense to the individual and with no further deductions from their regular paycheck, which would be given to them upon retirement with the recommendation that they invest it wisely. Maybe if these two steps are taken, Social Security could at least become two legs of that three-legged stool and provide our seniors with a little more security in their golden years. Aside from raising the standard of living for every sovereign man and woman in this country, the environment is an issue that's been in the headlines recently, as it should be. I can't think of a topic more important to each and every one of us. Many key issues relating to this planet's welfare have been touted so much in the press lately, there's no point in rehashing them again in this video presentation. But there are two subjects relating to the environment I would like to touch on now. One of these is the ever-growing problem of urban sprawl, and the other is a need to improve public transportation across this country. Have you ever considered how much of a restriction and a life-threatening hazard all of these massive highways are to pedestrians? Not to mention the problems they pose for the elderly and Americans with disabilities. Consequently, one major plank of the United Fascist Union's environmentalist platform is going to have to be re-centralization of America's urban hubs. Another is going to be ending urban sprawl. Stop building more and more of these superhighways. Stop deserting our long-established cities for the burbs. Make Main Street America the chief focal point of our towns and cities, and leave this country's unspoiled rural areas alone. The private motor car really was a wonderful invention. And we all owe Henry Ford a debt of gratitude for his wonderful innovation, the assembly line. But an even better innovation is the bus. Many of you out there are probably tittering right now at my silly idea we ought all use public transportation more often. Many times I've heard people get cheeky when one mentions the idea of forming carpools or using public transit to go from place to place, because it's not posh enough for them. Well, damn these snobs, I say. The bus is a fine way to get around, and I'll tell you this, we'd all better start using the bus more often, or our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will curse our generation every time they step outside of their front door because they'll have to wear a gas mask. To conclude the current events section of this video presentation, I'd like to make a few comments on the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. Here in the state of Maryland, our legislatures have proposed reforms that are nothing short of outright communism, which states that the only people that should be allowed to have access to firearms in our state are law enforcement officials. One of the rules of communism states, before an actual Bolshevik takeover of a country can occur, we must first disarm the general public. No one ever questioned the meaning of the Second Amendment before the last half of the 20th century. And I don't see why we should start now. The founding fathers of our country put the Second Amendment in the Constitution so that we, the people, would have the right to defend ourselves against tyrants if the need arose. The United Fascist Union demands an end to the Marxist Brady Act. In the name of the people, we also demand an end to unconstitutional background checks and illegal waiting periods before the federal government will grant American citizens their right to own private firearms, which is guaranteed to them in the United States Constitution. The Fascist Union promises you that once we're in government, each and every one of you that wants a firearm will have free and easy access to any gun you choose. Some of you may know I am a presidential candidate in the election this year. I take this step because I believe it is imperative we bring an end to another monopoly in this country if we are to promote true equality for all our countrymen. This is the two-party monopoly of America's political arena. This monopoly has dominated our country's national political scene since the end of the Second World War. In 1900, our country was a much different place. It had multiple parties, the Whigs, the Tories, Theodore Roosevelt's Bull Moose Party, and of course the Republicans and Democrats. With the stock market crash of 1929 and the Great Depression that followed in its wake, a man named Gus Hall managed to have some success founding the Communist Party USA. Throughout the early 1920s and 30s, he fielded candidates on his platform, but when the Depression ended, so did the party for the communists in this country. After Adolf Hitler rose to power in Germany, Fritz Kuhn caused quite a flurry with his German-American Bund. But when America entered the Second World War on the Allied side, the Nazi Party was outlawed in this country until a cessation of hostilities. Another man, George Rockwell, managed to revive the Nazi Party in the 1950s and did quite well, establishing headquarters across the country and getting Nazis to run for local offices everywhere, usually on some type of white rights platform, until he was assassinated by a disgruntled party member in 1968. The last I ever heard of Mr. Hall is that he still manages to run for president every time there's elections, in spite of extreme old age. The Libertarian Party has managed to field candidates in several East Coast states. Jesse Ventura managed to become governor of Minnesota on the Reform Party ticket. And there are several other minor officials scattered around the country who are associated with Mr. Perot's organization. Even some extremist fringe parties, like the National Socialist Libertarian Green Party, have managed to get reviewed in legitimate poli-sci magazines of late. So, all of these fringe elements have had some success making headway in competing in the limited political arena the two-party monopoly allows in this country. But none of their proposed platforms deviates enough from the norm to make a real dent in the established centralist political machine that dominates this country. What we want to accomplish with the United Fascist Union is to restore fascism to what our founder, the late lamented Benito Mussolini, meant it to be, a flexible movement and not a political party that will be diversified enough to encompass a wide range of far-reaching options that have been drawn from the best elements of both the ultra-right and left wings of contemporary geopolitics. What we would like to do for this country is redistribute the wealth, promote economic equality, decrease the level of poverty, and introduce conservative socialism as an alternative to decadent bourgeoisie capitalism. As President of the United States, I will be the people's president. My door will always be open to any American, anytime, who wants to address their concerns to me personally. I will work tirelessly in your behalf to protect your rights, to make sure your homes and private property are safe and secure, that your income level would be enough to keep you and your children well and happy. I swear that as president, I'll make certain your tax burdens will never be too great, and I promise you that while I occupy the Oval Office, there will never be any new taxes put upon the American people. I really believe a polytheistic, theocratic, socialist commonwealth patterned after Holy Babylon and the ancient Roman states would be more in keeping with what the founding fathers originally intended this country to be, rather than a disgusting, libertine, liberal democracy like it is today. The founding fathers of our republic were all wise men. Having extensively studied history, they chose to take a leaf from Plato's book, The Republic, and pattern our nation upon Roman common law. That's why many of the basic liberties and freedoms they outlined for Americans were granted to Roman subjects by Publius Servus over 3,000 years ago. Even George Washington, who's universally loved as the father of our country, fancied himself a latter-day Cincinnatus. We want to bring true fascism back into the world again, as the great statesman Benito Mussolini would have wanted, to his honor and his glory. The United Fascist Union wishes to use these doctrines to help the United States of America become whole, well, strong, and great once more, like it was in its glory days, so we can help you, the American people, prosper once more and provide you with national security to protect you from evil men, both at home and abroad, who pose a threat to you, your property, your liberty, and our beloved country. And in the hope that through fascism we can make a better world for all human beings, regardless of the color of their skin, what language they speak, what religion they practice, or wherever they may call home. To find out more about the United Fascist Union, or how you can help me become a ballot candidate in your home state, you can write to us at Post Office Box 1234, Elkton, Maryland, 21922, or call us at 410-620-9717. Or if you want, check out the United Fascist Union online at www.geocities.com/area51/chamber/7344. Viva Nova Roma, holy is Babylon.